Thank you so much for letting us share. And thank you, Jacob, for being here and for sharing the loan side of this. We really do need to work together as a team to help you guys buy homes. And so it's really important to have both sides. So I'm just going to go ahead and go over the real estate side. Like Jacob, we also have a process. These are just the quick steps it takes when you are buying a home. You got the pre-qualification or pre-approval. Then you can start looking, and sometimes that can be mixed, right? Like I don't require you to be pre-qualified first, but it is a good idea, and we'll get into why. Then you make an offer, then you look at title, then there's inspections, repairs, appraisals, and closing. So I'm going to go over all of that with you. I think it's really important to know what you're getting into, and sometimes it can be a lot. So I like that part of it to help you guys through that. First thing, Jacob already covered getting pre-approved for a mortgage and why that's important. Um, is it required before I show a home? No. Is it recommended? Absolutely, or at least towards the beginning, because um, I need to know that I'm not showing you a house that you're going to fall in love with and then you can't afford it. Or, we need to put in an offer and you're not qualified yet. Also, there is a difference, like Jacob said, in what you can qualify and what you can afford or what you want to afford. And that's a really good thing. That's another really good reason I recommend working with a good local lender that sits, like Jacob, that sits and takes the time to go over the whole process, what you need to do to qualify, what your end goal is, all of those kinds of things. I really recommend getting together with a local lender. The other thing with local lenders is you can call and talk to them. You can meet them face to face. I, as an agent, can call and talk to them face to face, rather than if you just get online and go to XYZ. You can get loans through there, but then there's you know whatever department, and sometimes it's really hard, and so that's something to think about when you are. The other thing too with having a local lender is, if you do need to work on your credit or anything like that, they're a lot more able to help you along the whole process than just somebody you call on a 1-800 number. And of course, there are different programs that might fit you, depending on. So it's really important to get pre approved. But Jacob covered that. Now we want to talk about an agent. Um, it's really important to know who is helping you, who is on your side. I know that agents, realtors, the words get thrown around. So I want you to know what these actually mean. Um, is a contract required? If you call me up to go show a house, do I have to have a contract with you? Um, there are contracts that can just be for that property, to say this is how I'm representing you while I'm showing you this property. Or there could be contracts that are for, I am your agent for every house. You call me and I will show you, for everything for this period of time. Those are things you need to know. So when you are talking to a real estate agent, you know that those things are negotiable. Um, Another really important thing is in Wyoming, we have what's called a real estate brokerage disclosure. It goes over how you're represented, who is representing you, or or the seller, and what that actually means. There are multiple ways to be represented. I'm not going to go into that all today. It's a lot, but just know that that is something that a document that we can get for you. There is a listing agent, and they represent the seller. Okay, so if you call up the listing agent, just know that anything you do can and will be held against you. Not really, not all the time, but I'd like to think of that, as we all know those words from lawyer land, right? It can be the same way. They're working for the seller. So if you call that listing agent up and you want to go see that house, don't tell them that you love this house and you would pay $1 million for it, because when you have a more realistic offer, and you're hoping they'll counter or anything, they're going to tell their seller they actually said they would pay this much, so just know who's representing you. And then there's what's called a customer in the state of Wyoming. That means we don't have a contract with you. Sometimes this is if you call the listing agent, they might represent the seller as a seller's agent, but they might represent you as a customer. So just know that there's no contract. That's another thing they can tell the seller. There are still things that they help you with. Again, that's on that real estate brokerage disclosure. And if these are things you want to talk to, just talk to agents about it so you know how you're going. Then there's what's called a buyer's agent. That means if I were your buyer's agent, my fiduciary responsibility would be to you. I'm not the seller's agent. And then there's an intermediary, which the fiduciary responsibility is to the transaction, and that so that you could do both sides if you would like. There's other ways to do it, just so that you know and get familiar with those words. And if you have questions, obviously let us know. You can call and ask us anytime if today's not the day. But just know that in the back of your head, when you're starting to look for a home, these are things that you need to be thinking about. Then we talk about commission. If things have sort of been changing in the world of real estate now. Commission, like a buyer's agent commission or sellers, they're not set. It's not a set standard. So if you hear that, you're going to have to pay X% in this market, that's not necessarily true. Like, it just depends. There is no set standard. And there are multiple ways who pays that commission. Again, that will be a contract between you and your agent, and you and or the seller. Sometimes the seller pays their agent, and then their agent offers some of that to the buyer's agent. Sometimes the seller offers what's called a buyer's agent commission, and they just pay some to the seller's agent and some to the buyer's agent. Sometimes it's just, I'll work with you. I'm a for sale by owner, but I'll work with you and pay. So there's just different ways to handle it. So make sure that you understand that. Um, Again, even if there is a for sale by owner, you can still be helped with a real estate agent. Um, Sometimes I'll help you, I'll be helping you, and there's a for sale by owner. I'll get into why you want somebody to represent you or to help you through this process, other than it's just a really long process. But with that for sale by owner, I can call them and say, I'm working with a buyer. Are you open to working with agents? So those are definite things. The other thing is, if you do go through open houses, which I do recommend, especially if you are considering going to buy sometime in the future, it's okay to just go start looking. Go to open houses. You get familiar with the market. But the open house is usually held by somebody who's working for the seller. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes it's not another agency or something is doing that, but just understand that person isn't necessarily representing you unless you have a contract with them. All right, so here's some tips to working with an agent. Make sure that your expectations are met, and then vice versa. So I really recommend asking for or doing a buyer's consultation with them, and that's your job for both of you. For the agent to know what you're looking for, what you're thinking, how long it's going to be before you buy, all of those things, as well as you can interview the agent as well to make sure that you fit those kinds of things. So once you have an agent, rely on your agent to show you all properties. Even if you see that for sale by owner, I contact your agent and have them, because again, you're not going to say anything that's going to be used against you. And also then they can show any house listed by any agent, and they can help you through that process. Okay. So also make sure that you ask about contracts before you sign. Make sure that you understand, and we go through those contracts with you. One thing I know Jacob mentioned, like Zillow. I'm not going to lie, sometimes I still look at Zillow, but there is a reason that you get your listings from the agent. You can get notifications sooner, as well as that agent can see what you are liking or seeing that also helps your agent. So it is a good idea, in my opinion, to go ahead, even if you're still looking on Zillow, to sign up for their listings so that you can communicate and use that for your agent. Um, and again, like I said about the open houses, it's okay and good to start learning about the market even before you're exactly ready to buy. So that is thing. And then make sure that you can work with an agent who can work with your lender. It is really important and very helpful in the transaction if they can work together. And, I can call Jacob and say, hey, we're about to go under contract. Can you send me that? Because I've done it at 8 o'clock at night. I'm like, sorry, but so being able to work on that lender when it's like, we need to get this offer in, even though it's late, they have one coming, whatever it is. So having that partnership is really important. So then once you work on that, then you really start thinking about what are your wants, what are your needs, what is like, this would be nice, but I seriously can't live without this. Think about the year of the house, how many bedrooms, those kinds of things. Those are all important things to think about when the next step. Then you find the house after you've gone and you've looked at houses, you find the house and you make an offer. It really depends on each specific case. I could make an offer with this person on this house and it's going to be a different strategy than this person, the same person but different house, or vice versa. It depends on what loan you're going to get. It's not just the price that matters when you're making an offer. This is another reason it's really good to have a real estate agent. But with the price, you got to think about, the market compared, what comparisons that house is. Is it priced at about the right amount? Those kinds of things. And we can give you those opinions. Ultimately, it's your decision. It's your money. You get to decide. So there's the price. You can make your offer stronger depending on what kind of loan you're going to get, if you're pre-approved or pre-qualified, how quickly you can close, how long you're going to have to inspect the property, how much, if you do need buyer's costs. This is another good reason for me to be in contact with your lender, because if you do need buyers, I need to know how much, and I need to figure that into our offer to make it strong. And then we also, in the offer, you can ask the sellers to pay for your agent compensation as well. So those are all things that you need to take into consideration when you're making an offer. Again, we disclose, we tell you, and then you decide. I like to think about it as your walkaway price. I know that's kind of hard to think about, but when if you're looking at a house and you like this house or you kind of like it, it depends on your price, right? So if you like this house, it fits all of your boxes, but you're not like, I have to have this house, you might offer a different price. But if it was this house and it's like, I have to have this house, I am willing to pay above or do all these other things. So it really just depends. And then if you have come up with that walkaway price, in my mind, if the person rejects your offer, then you're not like, oh, we should have gone higher. I mean, you still might have that feeling, but it just really reduces that. At the same time, when you do an offer, they can accept it, they can reject it, or they can counter and say, well, how about this? And it's a negotiation. Okay. Now, once your offer is accepted, you're under contract. I didn't put this in here, but you have earnest money that you have to put down. Then you do inspections. And so this is when, in Wyoming, it's called a buyer beware state. And it really is your job as a buyer to inspect and know what you're getting. Okay. So if the seller or agents know anything that would be material to the transaction, then they would have to disclose it. But sometimes they don't know, right? And so it's your job to get an inspector or inspect it yourself. you can do as many inspections or as little inspections as you want. I always recommend inspections, maybe a roof, a sewer, septic. It depends again on the property. So those kinds of things are something that you would want to talk with your agent about. Or if you noticed something, like that looks like there's some wire hanging, or, maybe we do need some electrical. Those kinds of things are things to think about. Here's just some ideas about different inspections that are available. But again, there's all kinds of inspections that you could do, as many as you want. So once you do all those inspections, you've looked at everything, then you can usually, depending on your contract, but depending on the accepted offer, you can ask for repairs. You can request that they pay for it all. There's a million ways to do it. Again, having somebody on your team helps. You could just ask that just this plumber does it, or those kinds of things. You make sure that you follow the dates in the contract, put in these requests by that time. And then usually the seller or the seller's agent will say, okay, they could either agree, same thing as your offer. They can agree, they can counter and say, well, he'll do this, but he's not going to do that, or vice versa. Or if you're not satisfied, even if they come back and they say, I'm not going to do this, but I'll do this, you can back out at that point. Okay. So that's something that you get to do. You still have to pay for your inspections, and sometimes people are like, oh, I just wasted, $1,500 or whatever on inspections. But if it saves you from buying a disaster, it really makes a big difference. So I think it's absolutely worth it. Um, so you're not getting a lemon house. Okay, and then we have appraisal. A lot of people get appraisal and inspections confused, or they think, I don't need to, I'm going to have an appraisal. The appraisal does not work for you necessarily. They're working basically for the lender. Am I sort of, they're making sure that the lender's investment in you is worth that much and it's going to hold that value, right?
Yeah, so when we're looking at the appraisal, it's to determine the amount of money that we're going to lend. So when we're looking at an appraisal, we always look at purchase price and appraisal. Whichever is lower is the amount that we're legally required to go by. So we need to make sure that when we're getting an appraisal in, the value is there of what the amount that we're lending out
Mm-hmm.
is. So that's really the purpose.
Right.
It's not really designed to be an inspection. It's
Yeah.
designed to look at what they call minimum property requirements. And really what they're concerned with is value.
Mm-hmm. And again, depending on what kind of loan you have, there may or may not be more, different requirements that they do. And they do sometimes ask for repairs, but again, it's to make sure that that home is holding value. Like one thing I've seen is sometimes chipped and peeling paint, because if you're that's not covered, it's getting deteriorated faster, and in 30 years, it's not going to be good. And then, your drainage, that kind of thing, those are things, but they're really just looking for that, not for the kinds of things that you guys are going to get stuck with paying
Yeah,
for.
yeah. In and of those minimum property requirements, really what they're looking for um, is there any major issues with the home that would affect its value or cause a problem for the lender? Because
Hmm.
we're taking a security interest in the property. We're interested in the long-term health of that property. So if there's something majorly wrong with it, we want to know.
Right. So don't think of them as an inspection, but they work with the lenders. And I don't know why I put closing costs in there, but that's okay. Um, Another thing that I get a lot of times is, oh, those appraisers, they just work for you agents because they usually come in exactly at what you. Well, that's because we did our job and we about figured what it is really worth in the market. But that being said, they don't work with us. I don't get to pick who appraises your house or anything like that. Um, and at that point, like Jacob said, if the appraisal came in lower than your offer, if it's in the contract that there's an appraisal clause, then that is a negotiation point. Otherwise, that difference either has to come out of your pocket or it's a big mess. So make sure that those things are thinking that you're thinking about as you go through the process. So after the appraisal is the fun part. Usually it's like, we got to get all this done. And then the appraisal comes, and then it's a couple weeks, usually. I mean, if you're doing a 30 to 45-day close, but then you have time to, get your insurance, turn over all of your utilities, get the rest of your documents to Jacob, start packing, and then you get to close, sign, and you get the fun part. So that is, in a nutshell, what the home buying process is like, so that you can be prepared for that. And if you want to connect with me, here's my contact information again. And thank you all for coming.